complexity can be a nightmare. And unless you manage them very, very closely and very actively, you will be in trouble. A program of that size and that length will require improvements. I mean, we can always optimize. You start slow just to put things in place. So the first 3 months, we had about, depending on the product, 5 to 10% of the delivery. If you do the math, it doesn't make any sense. It should have taken more than 21 months. But what we did by limiting the amount of scope delivered, we managed to take the time to implement the environment and the process, the model, and the people. As you ramp up, because you will have to ramp up, so we ramped up very quickly. In July 2011, we had about 250 people. By December, we had 450. And March, April, 650. That's where we were at peak time. And then we went down again. Okay, so we had a bell curve, if you will. And to make sure that the teams are performing, you need to seed them. So now, just try to imagine a cell and cell reproduction. That's based on that concept, essentially. You split the cell, and then it reproduces with half the team plus 4 people, half the team plus 5 people. Now, from 2 teams, you went to 4 teams. You can grow extremely quickly. Every month, you can grow extremely quickly this way. That's how we ramped up. To ensure that the people who had the knowledge didn't keep the knowledge for themselves, but would share the knowledge with others, and then we would split the teams over and over. Tracking productivity, tracking defects, tracking dependencies, tracking pretty much everything. We had metrics about everything. Allowed us, if you will, to not be reactive, but more proactive. So we could see very, very, very quickly whether one team, one product, one vendor was in trouble. In fact, at some point, we had to terminate one vendor. So we still have to. Now, not to worry. The 2 that we have kept are in India. That's good. As far as DevOps is concerned, of course, define and implement a continuous build, integration, and test environment onshore and offshore. It's not just onshore, it's also offshore. You have to have both, especially when you have a team that is not co-located. Final thoughts. First thing first, stage 0. Don't go agile, don't go development immediately. You need to set your foundation in terms of products, in terms of model, in terms of process. Everything has to be laid down. Like a house or a building. You start with the foundation. Select the right people at the right place at the right time. It's all 3 dimensions. It's not just the right people. It's also the right place and the right time. Connect with your offshore team. I mean, I'm sure that you're on the other side of the spectrum, but unless companies like SITA can connect with the suppliers and especially the partners, it cannot happen, not for a program of that size. It's very, very important that you connect with the people in general, and more importantly, when there are differences of culture. You need to understand how things happen. We implemented an purely iterative process. So if you think about what I said earlier, we had iterations of definition and design, iterations of review and planning, iterations of development, and iterations of testing or acceptance. What I would strongly recommend is that you go incremental with definition and design. So basically the difference between the 2 is that you define and design everything end-to-end for one use case, for instance, if that's your unit, as opposed to a partial implementation of the use case. That will limit, and we have found that now, we have implemented that now, subsequently on phase 2, and we have less rework in general. A balanced approach, I think that Matthew will be happy to see this, to have a balanced approach. It's not either or, it's not one or the other. It's always about balance of functional versus operational versus technical design and implementation. The technical piece of it is more on the architecture, by the way. The architecture has to be implemented and fulfill the needs of functional requirements as well as operational requirements. And until you have that balance of effort spent, most people will spend their time on functional requirements or implementing the functional requirements. Not much time necessarily implementing the architecture, or sometimes they do and then they forget about it. It's a continuous development lifecycle. It's not just one time. It's not just a one-time thing. And finally, for those who actually deal with offshore, contracts need to be aligned with what you do. So not from an operational standpoint, because that's not the contracts. The contracts are not about defining how we're going to work together, but the conditions and the definition of done is extremely important. That concludes my presentation. In summary, from our experience, Agile Factory does work for large, small and large projects. I had it work for a project that involved 30 people at max, another one, very complex 2-year project that involved 60 people offshore, and this one that involved 650 people offshore over a period of 2 years. Thank you.
Fast-paced project, how did you scale and plan your data center resources, the infrastructure?
So there are two aspects of it. One is to build the application and configure and deploy the database. So there's two aspects of it. When you have a project of 2 years, you plan and you develop everything in parallel, basically. That's why the stage 0 is so important. That's the common starting point, if you will. That's when you define the architecture. That's when you define the major business modules, etc. Right? And then the data center, which has the final integration system, staging system, and production system, DR, okay, has the 2 years to actually get ready upon those same requirements. In parallel, as I said, we have implemented offshore and in-house a separate development and testing environment based on the same topology. So it's not the same size, but it's the same topology. So you have the development fulfilling their needs in terms of system, and the data center working on their side. So the data center didn't have the last 15 days of the program to actually do it. They start from the beginning. And because they're production-centric, they don't have much time, and to your question about scalability, they don't have much time taking care of development and testing issues. So we do take care of that.
I mean, but as your
not necessarily in terms of system. Not necessarily in terms of system, because we have an architecture that is scalable in the first place. Right? So redundant and scalable. So that's not an issue. So we agree on the basic specifications, the topology of the system, and then we scale up by adding servers or virtual machines, essentially. But the key here is to separate production, pure production, from development in terms of implementation, and involve the development team, the DevOps team, actually, in that deal.
How much time did you spend in?
Didn't have any code developed, right? So that stage 0 was way behind us. Now I can refer to another project that was run by me from beginning to the end, very successfully, where we had a stage 0. And it really depends on the size of the program. So in that case, that program was over a period of 2 years, including stage 0, which was 3 months. 3 months, and we had a Scrum team, if you will, made of architects and system engineers, etc., for 3 months only, defining the stage 0. And then for the rest of the 2 years, okay, 21 months essentially, we had development and testing. So 18 months plus 3 months period. The very last 3 months were more dedicated to final acceptance and cleanup.
Nice. Co-located with the core team, but you had proxies. What challenges did you face under those circumstances?
Okay, so the time zone and the overlay requirements at a very high level. The way we did it is because we hired people offshore who had expertise in that domain. And that's really what you need to do. You cannot just count on the SMEs passing on the knowledge to some people who have never heard of the airline industry, for instance. So with that, of course, if you have very high level requirements, you can go a little bit deeper from your own experience and then review with the SMEs on a daily basis. So they were working on a daily basis, a lot of phone conversations, WebEx type of conferences, and also every 2 weeks or every half month, we had demos, essential demos. So we had demos for all the products on the 15th of the month. And that was the feedback that we got.
Teams you talked about. So I understand it was overall, the whole program was distributed across multiple locations. But within the Scrum team, were they co-located or
Yes.
were they also spread
Yes.
out?
No. In fact, managed to put in place what we call a agile-friendly environment. So the Scrum teams themselves were all co-located. In fact, all the Scrum teams for a given product were all co-located. All of them, all co-located. So at some time we had in Bangalore, for instance, over 250 people on the same floor in 18 teams. And each Scrum team was made of 10 people. Okay? 9 plus 1 exactly. The core team itself was responsible for all the management of the Scrum teams, and that's where the Chief Scrum Master was. So you have a Chief Scrum Master, one Scrum Master for 2 teams, so Scrum Master is not needed for full-time for 1 team. So 50-50, which ensured some integration points being managed.
So from your experience with the distributed Scrum teams also, like 1 or 2 roles could be in a different location?
No, I would not recommend it. I would recommend that the Scrum team be co-located. Now, as before, the entire product co-located, but some products depend on others, and they were not co-located from that angle.
Okay, thanks.
But that, if everything is co-located, typically it helps with velocity. So we were slightly penalized, if you will, by the fact that not everybody was co-located. Now, I don't expect, because people are co-located, I don't necessarily expect that they talk to one another every day, every minute, every second. That's very distracting, right? So there are some benefits and some pros and cons of being co-located or not, but definitely for the Scrum team, you've got to be co-located.
You're in such a large program and such distributed teams and so many large number of Scrum teams working together at the same time. Generally, status and dependency tracking, like you mentioned, was critical.
Yeah.
So how are you? What was the reporting structure in your? Could you describe a little?
So, software delivery manager, responsible for the cross-functional team and also managing the core team, the offshore core team. That's at the product level. Then we have a PMO that looks at it from a system standpoint, from an end-to-end standpoint. So you have 2 types of reporting. You have the vertical reporting from offshore up to the management and eventually to me. And then you have the PMO that looks at it from an end-to-end perspective.
Hello. Actually, in Scrum, we believe it's self-organizing teams, right? And then we don't have managers there, or there's a hindrance to the Scrum team because people look to the manager to resolve the impediments. But here, what I got from your presentation, you have project managers, program managers, tech managers. So how does it work? I mean,
Not sure.
Self-organizing teams. Right?
That's correct.
We don't believe managers are part
That
of
is correct.
supposed to be.
That is correct.
It's a hindrance to, but then your structure had a lot of program managements and project management.
No, it's not exactly that. You have the core team, and that core team is made of a program manager. So the Scrum team were given a backlog to commit to, and they would sometimes commit to less, commit to more, and they were self-organized. And the Scrum Master is the only person who actually leads the team during that sprint. The Scrum Master then works with the Chief Scrum Master to report and to work on the different issues that he or she has and across the board. But the managers themselves were not involved with the day-to-day management of the Scrum teams. On the contrary, they were not. We're not talking about people management, that's two different things, right? So the managers were not involved with the day-to-day management of the Scrum teams. Only the hub Scrum Master. And they had sprints, they have scrums every day for 15 minutes. The Scrum Master would just then have another 15 minutes scrum with the second team. And 30 minutes after that, if I'm not mistaken, then they would have a 20, 30 minutes scrum every day with the Scrum Master. And that was the reporting, to answer your question as well, that was the reporting, if you will. The managers are not looking at micromanagement. It's not about micromanagement at all. The program managers look at it from an end-to-end standpoint. Trust me, they don't have time to manage 18 teams in parallel. 200 people, it's not possible. The Scrum teams were self-managed.
Management and testing. So now let's say you have about 52 Scrum teams doing things in parallel.
Yeah.
For a specific product, you may have multiple Scrum teams working
correct.
on that particular product stories.
Up to 18 years.
Right, up to 18. And they are delivering stuff or code basically every 2 weeks, every 15 days.
Yes.
Right. How do they manage, how do you manage dependencies across Scrum teams, number one? And second is, when the team delivers at the end of 15th day, how do they ensure that they're properly tested? Because they would have still have dependency on other Scrum teams.
So testing is at different levels. And by the way, when I talk about the Agile Factory Framework or DevOps, it's not just the principles and the practices, it's also all the tools. And not just the tools to compile and, okay, it's also the tools, as someone said earlier, to look after the quality of the software and the output of the programmers. So the 80% coverage was actually met, the unit testing. Then you have functional integration testing, if you will. So that could be within the team, obviously, because some people could be working on different services and could integrate. And then among the teams. So that's why we have one Scrum Master for 2 teams. So then we would ensure some level of integration here. And the teams had to work together on top of this at a certain time during the sprint, right? Because the sprint is not just, okay, we plan something and then we do development, we unit test, and then we provide everything. No. During the sprint, there are some times where you actually do development, you design, of course, of development, and integration. And that's when, within the team, you have some work happening, or among the teams, or among the products. And in fact, the offshore partner here in Bangalore has conference calls with their competition, or, in the business, they are competitors, essentially. But as far as the program is concerned, they work together as one team. And they work together very well. So we have intra-dependencies, what we call intra-dependencies in Bangalore, and then inter-dependencies, inter-module dependencies. And they are managed together, essentially, through very, very close collaboration between those 2 partners and us. And we don't sit in the middle, by the way. We don't say, okay, you have to call us, and then we call them, and you call us, and no. We work as a triangle. Remember the triangle? Yeah. We work as a triangle. We own it all. We own it. We are one team, not 2 partners at SITA on one side. And by the way, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Olivier.
Thank you.
So we have our next topic, the next presentation given by ThoughtWorks. We have Abhishek Kumar, Senior Consultant from ThoughtWorks. His topic is continuous delivery, cleaner, faster, bigger. So the continuous delivery, the whole idea itself came from ThoughtWorks. So this will be directly from the horse's mouth. Here its name is Abhishek Kumar. Over to you, Abhishek. And let's go on with it while laptop is getting arranged.
Yeah, hi Olivier. So the question from my side is, I don't know where it's. Okay, I want to make an eye contact. So I think I didn't hear a lot about product owner in this whole program, and I think I heard a lot about Scrum Master, Scrum team. But I think one of the biggest challenges we face during this whole approach is the presence of the product owner and the decision making of prioritizing the backlog. So I didn't hear a lot about that, so maybe if you can touch upon that, it'll be great. Thanks.